You should probably leave before you embarrass yourself, ma'am. The voice carried across the observation deck, calm enough to sound polite and sharp enough to make the meaning clear. Claire Donovan did not answer. She stood beside the chain-link fence in a plain gray jacket, one hand resting lightly on the worn canvas case at her feet. There was no uniform on her shoulders. No rank insignia. No unit patch. Her visitor credential showed only a surname, a photograph, and a clearance number. To Chief Petty Officer Nathan Cole, that was all he needed to know. This was a precision range, not a place for retired visitors to offer opinions. Beyond the fence, the late morning sun washed the training ground in pale gold. Range flags moved in different directions. The nearest one lifted gently toward the east. Farther down, another sagged, then stirred toward the south. A faint shimmer hovered above the ground between the firing line and the distant target berm. Nathan barely noticed any of it. He was watching the clock. The qualification exercise had already been delayed, and the next group was waiting. I have authorization, Claire said quietly. I know, Nathan replied. But authorization does not mean you need to be standing here. Claire looked past him. Not at the shooters. Not at the equipment. She studied the grass along the range, then the thin strip of dust beyond the concrete barrier. Her eyes moved slowly, as if she were reading something written across the landscape. Nathan folded his arms. Is there something you need? She finally looked at him. Her expression was calm. Your wind call is going to change. Nathan glanced toward the range. It already has. No, Claire said. The flag changed. The wind did not. For a second, nobody spoke. A young service member nearby lowered his clipboard and looked toward the range. Nathan gave a short, skeptical smile. You can tell that from here? Claire did not respond immediately. She touched the edge of the old canvas case with her fingertips. The fabric had faded from years of use. One corner carried a small gouge that had been repaired by hand. From here, she said. And from the grass. Nathan looked at the case. You used that professionally? Claire nodded once. A long time ago. Military? She paused. Yes. What rank? Another pause. It does not matter anymore. Nathan studied her face, waiting for the familiar answer that usually followed a statement like that. It never came. Claire simply turned back toward the range. A warm breeze crossed the observation deck, carrying the dry scent of dust and sun-heated canvas. The nearest flag lifted again. Claire watched it for 3 seconds. Then she said, almost to herself, they are correcting for the wrong wind. Nathan's expression changed. This time, he did not smile. For the first time that morning, Chief Petty Officer Nathan Cole stopped looking at the clock. He looked at the woman instead. Claire Donovan remained beside the fence, perfectly still, while the range seemed to move around her. The flags shifted at different intervals. Dust lifted in thin ribbons across the ground. Heat shimmered above the distant berm. The shooters were waiting for the next instruction, but Claire appeared to be waiting for something else. Nathan stepped closer to the observation line. You said the wind call is wrong, he said. I said the correction is based on the wrong wind. That sounds like the same thing. It is not. Her answer was quiet, almost patient. Nathan glanced toward the range again. The nearest flag was now pointing east. A second flag farther down had gone limp. The third moved gently in another direction. None of it looked dramatic. That was exactly why most people missed it. What are you seeing? Nathan asked. Claire studied the landscape for another moment. The first layer is moving toward the east. The second is not keeping the same direction. The heat near the ground is also changing what you think you are seeing. Nathan frowned. You can read that without instruments? The instruments are useful. She looked at him. They are not the whole picture. A young service member named Owen Barrett had been standing several yards away with a clipboard. He lowered it slowly. He had heard the exchange, and something about Claire's wording bothered him. Not because it sounded wrong. Because it sounded familiar. Nathan noticed Owen watching them. Do you recognize her? He asked. Owen shook his head. No, Claire turned toward the range again. The next correction will probably look right for a few seconds. Nathan waited. And then the conditions will separate. He looked at the clock once more. The qualification exercise had already been delayed long enough. Still, something in Claire's confidence made him hesitate. How long? He asked. Claire did not answer with a number. She pointed toward a small patch of grass beside the range road. Watch that. Nathan followed her hand. Nothing happened at first. Then the grass leaned gently in one direction while the flag nearest the firing line moved another way. Owen saw it too. His expression changed. That is strange, he murmured. Claire nodded. It is normal. People just do not always notice normal things. Nathan looked back at her. You were a sniper? The word hung between them for a moment. Claire did not react to it. I was a service member who spent a long time learning how to observe. That is not an answer. It is the answer I am giving you. Owen almost smiled, but stopped himself. Nathan studied the old canvas case again. There was something about Claire's calm that made his earlier dismissal feel less certain. Why are you here? He asked. Claire rested her hand on the case. I have an appointment. With who? Captain Morris. Nathan glanced toward the facility entrance. And after that? Claire looked across the range one more time. I go home. A gust moved across the observation deck. The flags changed almost together this time. Claire noticed immediately. Nathan did too. Neither spoke. For several seconds, the only sound was the soft rattle of canvas against the fence. Then Owen looked at the old case and saw the faded marking on its side for the first time. His eyes narrowed. He had seen that symbol before. Somewhere inside the training building. Owen Barrett stared at the faded marking on the canvas case, trying to remember where he had seen it before. It was not a unit patch. It was not a rank insignia. It looked more like a small symbol from another era, half hidden beneath. Years of dust and careful repairs. Claire Donovan noticed his expression, but said nothing. Nathan Cole did not notice the marking at all. His attention remained on the range, where the qualification exercise was preparing to resume. Everyone back to position, Nathan called. Owen took one last look at Claire before returning to his post. The range grew quiet again. Claire stayed behind the observation line, exactly where she had been told to remain. She did not argue. She did not offer another opinion. But when the first range flag shifted, her eyes followed it immediately. Nathan noticed. You really believe your reading is better than the range data? He asked. Claire looked at the instruments mounted beside the observation station. No, Nathan waited. Then what? I believe the data is accurate for the place where it was collected. She pointed toward the far end of the range. The people are using it as if it describes every part of the distance. Nathan looked toward the target berm. That is a technical distinction. It can become an important one. Owen heard the exchange and glanced back. Claire was not speaking like someone trying to impress anyone. She sounded like someone explaining a lesson she had already learned many years ago. Nathan walked toward the observation station and studied the readings. Everything looks normal. It does. Then what are we missing? Claire looked toward the ground. The middle. Nathan followed her gaze. Between the firing line and the distant berm was a broad stretch of sunlit terrain. From their position, it looked empty and harmless. But the heat shimmered above it in uneven layers. A few seconds later, the flag nearest the middle section moved differently from the one closest to them. Owen noticed it this time. There, he said quietly. Nathan looked at him. What? The middle flag. Nathan turned back. The flag had already settled. It moved. For about 2 seconds, Claire said. Nathan stared at her. You counted it? I noticed it. She said nothing more. The exercise resumed, and the team began working through the conditions. Claire remained silent. She did not tell anyone what to do. She simply watched. Then the results came in, and the same pattern appeared again. The corrections that looked reasonable at the firing line did not remain consistent farther downrange. Nathan rubbed his chin. His earlier certainty was beginning to fade. How did you learn to see that? He asked. Claire looked toward the old canvas case. Someone taught me to stop looking at the obvious thing. Who? Claire's fingers rested briefly on the worn fabric. A very patient instructor. Owen stepped closer. Was that symbol on the case part of your unit? Claire looked at him. No, then what is it? She paused. A school. Owen frowned. A school. A way of thinking. The answer seemed too simple. Yet Claire's voice carried the weight of something much older. Nathan looked again at the faded marking. What kind of school? Claire turned toward the range. The kind where they taught you that the target was never the first thing you needed to understand. Owen went still. He had heard those words before. Not from Claire. Not at this range. Somewhere inside the training building, years ago, printed beneath an old photograph that most people walked past without noticing. Owen Barrett waited until the next exercise had ended before walking back toward the observation deck. He carried his clipboard under one arm, but his attention was fixed on the faded marking on Claire Donovan's canvas case. The symbol was small enough to miss from a few feet away, yet once he noticed it, he could not stop seeing it. "Where did you get that?" he asked. Claire looked down at the case. "A long time ago. I have seen that mark before." Nathan Cole turned from the range. "Where?" Owen hesitated. "Inside the training building." Nathan frowned. "On what?" "An old photograph." Claire's expression remained unchanged, but her fingers moved slowly across the worn canvas. "Which photograph?" Owen searched his memory. "A group of instructors. The picture is probably 20 years old, maybe older. It is near the hallway for advanced precision training." Nathan gave a quiet laugh. "You are telling me a faded symbol on an old bag is connected to some training photograph?" "I am telling you I recognize it," Owen said. Claire looked at him for a moment. "Then you should look again." There was no challenge in her voice. That made it stranger. Nathan stepped closer to the case. The canvas was faded almost white along the edges. One corner had been repaired with dark thread. Near the center was the small marking Owen had noticed, partially hidden beneath years of wear. "What does it mean?" Nathan asked. Claire did not answer immediately. She opened the case just enough to check the contents, then closed it again. It belonged to a school. A school for what? Observation. Nathan shook his head. That is a pretty broad answer. It was meant to be. Owen studied her face. Were you one of the instructors? Claire looked across the range. The afternoon light had begun to soften, turning the dust in the air almost silver. For a while, Nathan's skepticism returned. "You expect us to believe you were some kind of instructor here?" "No," Claire's answer came without hesitation. "I do not expect you to believe anything." That stopped him. Claire was not trying to win the argument. She was not trying to establish authority. She seemed almost uncomfortable with the idea of explaining herself. Owen looked toward the training building. "Would you show me the photograph?" Claire nodded. "If you want to see it." The three of them walked toward the building. Their footsteps sounded softly against the concrete walkway. Inside, the temperature dropped several degrees. The hallways smelled faintly of paper, coffee, and old floor polish. Framed photographs covered one wall. Modern teams. Training classes. Graduation groups. Then Owen stopped. There. The photograph was larger than he remembered. A younger group stood outside an older training facility. In the center was an instructor with dark hair and a steady expression. Beside her was a much younger Claire Donovan. Owen stared. Nathan stepped closer. "That is you." Claire nodded. "Yes." The photograph contained no rank explanation, no dramatic caption, no list of achievements. Only a small plaque beneath it, Field Observation Instructor Program. Owen read the line twice. "Why have I never heard of this?" Claire gave a faint smile. "Most people do not remember the teachers." Nathan looked from the photograph to Claire. "What did you teach?" Claire's eyes rested on her younger face. For the first time that day, something changed in her expression. Not pride. Not nostalgia. Something quieter. "Patience," she said. "How to notice what everyone else walks past." Owen looked again at the faded symbol on the canvas case. Now he understood why it had felt familiar. But one question remained. "Who trained you?" Claire did not answer. She simply looked farther down the hallway, toward an older photograph hidden beneath years of newer frames. Her hand remained on the canvas case. The worn fabric seemed to carry a history that the walls had almost forgotten. The older photograph waited at the end of the hallway, almost hidden behind a newer display. Owen Barrett brushed a thin layer of dust from the frame and revealed a nameplate beneath it. Nathan Cole leaned closer, while Claire Donovan remained several steps behind them. She did not need to see the photograph again. She already knew every face in it. "That is the instructor," Owen said. "The one who trained you?" Claire nodded. "His name was Daniel Mercer." Nathan looked at the photograph. Daniel stood near the center, surrounded by several service members. His posture was relaxed, his expression serious, and his eyes seemed to look directly beyond the camera. "I have heard that name," Nathan said. "He retired years ago." "He taught people to observe before they acted," Claire said. "He believed that the best decision usually came after the longest quiet moment." Owen studied the photograph again. "And you were one of his students?" Claire smiled faintly. "I was." "You became an instructor after that?" "Eventually." Nathan crossed his arms. "Then why did you come here today?" Claire looked toward the far end of the hallway. "Because Captain Morris asked me to review something." "What?" "A training problem." Nathan exchanged a glance with Owen. "The range." Claire nodded. "The same conditions we saw this morning. You knew the problem before you arrived." "I suspected it." "Why did you not tell us immediately?" Claire looked at him. "Would you have listened?" Nathan opened his mouth, then stopped. He remembered the observation deck. He remembered telling her that authorization did not mean she needed to be there. He remembered how quickly he had dismissed her. Owen quietly looked away. Claire did not seem interested in making him feel embarrassed. That somehow made the moment heavier. A door opened farther down the hallway. Captain Laura Morris stepped out carrying a folder. She was in her late 40s, with the calm expression of someone accustomed to busy days and difficult decisions. She stopped when she saw Claire. "You made it." Claire nodded. "The range has a layered wind problem." Captain Morris looked toward Nathan. "You noticed it?" Nathan answered honestly. She noticed it. Laura's eyes moved to the canvas case. For the first time, her expression changed. "You still have that?" Claire looked down. "It still works." Captain Morris smiled. "I suppose that is why you kept it." Owen watched the exchange. There was no surprise between them. There was recognition. Deep recognition. "You know her?" Nathan asked. Laura looked at him. "Everyone in this building should know her." Claire gave a small shake of her head. "That is not necessary." Laura ignored the protest. She opened the folder and removed an old training document. The paper had been carefully preserved, its edges slightly yellowed. At the top was the same faded symbol found on Claire's case. Beneath it was a list of names. Claire Donovan was there. Daniel Mercer was above her. Nathan read the page twice. Then he noticed something else. Next to Claire's name was a handwritten note. Not a rank. Not a title. Just 4 words. "Trust her observation first." Nathan looked at Claire. She seemed almost embarrassed by the attention. "That was Daniel's rule," she said. "He wrote it for everyone." Owen looked toward the old photograph. "Then why does it feel like it was written for today?" Claire turned toward the window. Outside, the range flags were beginning to move again. Because good lessons do not expire. The next morning, Nathan Cole arrived at the range before sunrise. The air was cooler, the concrete still carrying the faint chill of the night. He expected to find the usual preparation already underway, but Claire Donovan was standing alone near the observation station, her worn canvas case beside her. Captain Laura Morris was there too, holding a folder against her side. Neither woman spoke when Nathan approached. Claire simply looked toward the range. The flags were barely moving. "You came early," Nathan said. Claire nodded. "So did you." Nathan looked across the empty training ground. "I reviewed the data from yesterday." Claire waited. "You were right about the changing conditions." "The range was showing you the conditions," Claire said. "I only noticed the pattern." Nathan gave a slow nod. His attitude had changed since the previous day, but he still seemed uncomfortable admitting how much. Laura opened the folder. "There is another reason I asked Claire to stay." Nathan looked at her. "What is it?" Laura removed a printed map of the training area and placed it on the table. Several sections were marked with handwritten notes. "We have been comparing our current observations with older records." Nathan studied the markings. "How old?" 23 years. Claire looked at the map. The terrain has changed. Exactly, Laura said. The range was redesigned several times, but some of the original observation points remained. Nathan traced one of the marked areas with his finger. This one is no longer used. Correct. Claire pointed toward the western edge of the map. But the ground is still there. Nathan looked at her. Why does that matter? Claire answered without looking up. Because the land remembers patterns even when people change the equipment. Nathan stared at the map. Laura gave him a moment before continuing. We have had repeated inconsistencies during advanced training. Nothing dangerous. Just results that do not match what the instruments suggest. And you think the old observation records explain it? Nathan asked. I think they might. Claire picked up a pencil and marked a narrow section of the map. The original instructors watched this area from here. She moved the pencil several inches. Then they compared it with this point. Nathan leaned closer. Why? Because one location showed what the air was doing, while the other showed what the ground was doing to the air. Nathan looked at her. That sounds complicated. It is simpler than it sounds. Claire pointed toward the range. You are not measuring one environment. You are measuring several connected environments. Owen Barrett arrived carrying 2 cups of coffee. He stopped when he saw the map. You found the old records. Laura nodded. Owen handed 1 cup to Nathan and kept the other. I stayed late looking through the archive. He pulled a folded photocopy from his clipboard. There was something else. Claire looked at the page. Her expression changed slightly. Owen placed it beside the map. It was a handwritten training note dated 23 years earlier. At the bottom was Daniel Mercer's signature. Claire read it silently. Nathan watched her face. What does it say? She turned the page toward him. The sentence was simple. When the numbers disagree with the landscape, do not blame the landscape. Nathan looked at Claire. That sounds like him. It was. Claire folded the paper carefully. Then a faint sound came from the far side of the range. One of the flags lifted. Another followed a few seconds later. Claire watched both. There, she said. Nathan looked. What? The same pattern. Owen stepped closer to the window. The middle section? Claire nodded. And this time, we know where to look. The observation station grew quiet as Claire Donovan placed 1 finger on the old map. We need to watch the middle section before we change anything, she said. Nathan Cole looked toward the range, then back at her. How long? Long enough to see the pattern repeat. Captain Laura Morris checked her watch. The next training cycle begins in 12 minutes. Claire nodded. That is enough. Owen Barrett moved beside the window and watched the distant flags. The first one lifted gently. The second followed. The third remained still. Claire noticed the sequence immediately. There. Nathan leaned forward. I see it. Do not watch the flags, Claire said. Watch what happens between them. Nathan shifted his attention toward the ground. At first, nothing seemed different. Then a faint ribbon of dust moved across the middle section while the nearest flag barely reacted. Owen pointed toward it. The surface is moving before the flag changes. Claire nodded. Exactly. Nathan studied the range with new concentration. He had spent years trusting instruments, procedures, and carefully established measurements. Now he was beginning to understand what Claire had been trying to explain since yesterday. The equipment was not wrong. The interpretation was incomplete. Laura opened the old training document again. There is another note from Daniel Mercer. She read it quietly. Never let confidence become a substitute for observation. Nathan looked at Claire. He wrote that too? He wrote many things. Did you believe all of them? Claire smiled faintly. No, Nathan raised an eyebrow. Then why remember them? Because the best instructors did not expect you to agree with them. They expected you to test what they taught. Owen looked toward the range. So, what should we test? Claire pointed to the observation station. Compare the instruments with direct observation at 3 different points. Nathan immediately began organizing the readings. He called for 2 additional observers and asked them to record conditions separately. There was no rush in Claire's manner. She simply watched. Minutes passed. The first set of readings appeared normal. The second set showed a slight difference. The third revealed the pattern Claire had predicted. Nathan stared at the numbers. The middle section changes before the equipment near the line registers it. Claire nodded. Now you know. How did you know before we measured it? Nathan asked. I did not know. You sounded certain. Experience can sound like certainty, Claire replied. But experience is still only a reason to look closer. Nathan lowered the clipboard. That answer stayed with him. He had expected a secret technique, some forgotten military trick, something impressive enough to explain why a woman without visible rank had understood the range faster than a room full of specialists. Instead, Claire kept returning to the same idea. Observe. Compare. Question. Verify. Nothing dramatic. Nothing mysterious. Just discipline practiced for years. Owen walked over with the final readings. The pattern is consistent. Laura looked at Nathan. What do you recommend? Nathan paused. Then he looked at Claire. For the first time, he did not see a visitor standing outside the system. He saw someone whose knowledge belonged inside the conversation. I recommend we change the observation procedure, he said. Claire gave a small nod. Good. Nathan smiled. That is all. What were you expecting? Maybe congratulations. Claire looked toward the range. The range does not need congratulations. It needs people paying attention. A distant flag lifted again. This time, Nathan noticed it before anyone else. He smiled quietly. Claire saw him notice. She said nothing. By late afternoon, the range had settled into a strange quiet. Nathan Cole stood beside the observation table, reviewing the new measurements while Owen Barrett compared them with the older records. Claire Donovan remained near the window, watching the flags without touching the equipment. Captain Laura Morris entered carrying a sealed folder. She placed it on the table and looked directly at Claire. I found something you should see. Claire turned. What is it? Laura opened the folder and removed a black and white photograph. It showed a small training team standing beside an older field vehicle. Claire recognized the location immediately. Nathan leaned over the table. Is that the original observation site? Claire nodded. Yes. Owen looked at the photograph. There are only 4 people. There were 4 instructors assigned to that program, Claire said. Nathan pointed to the woman standing at the edge of the group. Is that you? Claire studied the image for several seconds. Yes. Nathan looked surprised. You were younger than I expected. Claire gave a faint smile. Most people are. Laura turned the photograph over. A handwritten note covered the back. Daniel Mercer wrote this after the final evaluation. Owen read it aloud. One student noticed the change before the instruments did. Nathan looked at Claire. That was you. Claire did not answer. Laura closed the folder. There is more. She removed another document. It was an old personnel record, carefully preserved in a clear sleeve. Nathan read the heading, then looked up. Why was this kept separate? Laura answered quietly. Because some records were never entered into the modern archive. Claire's expression tightened slightly. Daniel kept copies. He did, Laura said. And he left instructions that they should only be opened when someone asked the right question. Nathan frowned. What question? Claire looked toward the range. Who taught the observer? The room became silent. Owen looked at Claire with a new kind of respect. You were not simply trained by Daniel. Claire shook her head. No, then who? Claire took a slow breath. Before Daniel, there was another instructor. A woman named Evelyn Hart. Nathan waited. Claire continued. She had served as a precision observer during a period when the training program was still being developed. She taught Daniel. Daniel taught me. Laura nodded. And now you are here because the same principle is appearing again. Nathan looked at the old map. The pattern. The discipline, Claire said. Technology changes. Equipment changes. People change. But observation remains. Nathan looked down at his own notes. For the first time, the old records did not feel like history. They felt like instructions that had somehow survived long enough to reach the present. Owen noticed another line on the document. Claire, look here. She leaned closer. Beneath Evelyn Hart's name was a short handwritten sentence. Claire read it silently. Then she smiled. What does it say? Nathan asked. Claire turned the page toward him. Never confuse a quiet person with an unprepared person. Nathan looked at her, then at the faded photograph. The meaning was becoming impossible to miss. Claire had never needed to announce what she knew. She had simply waited for the right moment to demonstrate it. Laura closed the folder and stood. Tomorrow's evaluation is being changed. Nathan looked up. Because of her findings? Laura nodded. Because of what we failed to notice. Claire picked up her worn canvas case. Then tomorrow, pay attention. The next morning, the training area looked different in the early light. The same buildings stood beyond the range, the same observation tables waited beneath the covered platform, and the same flags moved gently in the morning air. Yet something had changed. People were watching differently. Nathan Cole arrived before the scheduled evaluation and found Owen Barrett already reviewing the updated procedure. Captain Laura Morris stood nearby with a folder in her hands. Claire Donovan was several yards away, looking toward the western edge of the range. Nathan walked over. You saw it again? Claire asked without turning. The pattern? Yes. Nathan looked toward the flags. I noticed it before I checked the instruments. Claire finally turned and gave him a small smile. Then you learned something. The evaluation began shortly afterward. Several observers took positions around the range, each recording conditions independently. No one relied on a single measurement. They watched the air, the ground, the flags, and the instruments together. The process was slower than the old method, but it was also clearer. Within the first hour, the same inconsistency appeared. Nathan recognized it immediately. He compared the readings, checked the observation notes, and then looked toward Claire. She did not move. She simply waited. Laura approached with the updated report. The results are consistent. Nathan nodded. They match what Claire predicted. Claire shook her head. I did not predict the result. I showed you where to look. Laura smiled. There is a difference. Owen walked over carrying the old photograph from the hallway. He held it beside the current training area. I think I finally understand why Daniel kept this. Nathan looked at the photograph. What do you mean? Owen pointed to the younger Claire standing beside Daniel Mercer. Everyone in this picture is watching the same direction. Except Claire. Nathan studied the image. She was looking slightly away from the others, toward the far edge of the field. Claire noticed what he had seen. Daniel taught us not to copy the person beside us. Nathan looked at her. He taught you to think independently. He taught us to verify. Laura closed the report. That lesson is being added to the training program. Claire looked surprised. You do not need to do that. We do, Laura replied. Because the lesson was never really written down. Owen smiled. Now it is. He handed Claire a fresh copy of the revised procedure. At the bottom was a simple statement adapted from the old notes. Observe first. Assume nothing. Verify everything. Claire read the words quietly. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Nathan stepped forward and offered his hand. Thank you. Claire accepted it. For what? For making me slow down. Claire smiled. That is usually harder than moving quickly. The morning sun rose higher, warming the concrete and turning the metal rails bright. The flags settled for a moment. Nathan watched them, then looked toward the old photograph in Owen's hands. He understood now why Claire had never needed to explain her past. Her knowledge was not a story she carried for recognition. It was a responsibility she carried for the people who came after her. Laura looked toward the range and then at Claire. Will you come back tomorrow? Claire picked up her worn canvas case. If you still need me. Laura smiled. I think we will. Claire walked toward the exit, her footsteps quiet against the concrete. Nathan watched her go. There was no ceremony, no announcement, no demand for recognition. Only the quiet respect of people who had finally learned what they had failed to notice. Behind them, the old photograph remained on the table, preserving a younger face and an older lesson. Some people leave behind medals, titles, and records. Others leave behind something harder to measure, the ability to teach people how to see.